Good morning, everyone. This is a meeting of the New York State Board of Real Estate. My name is Whitney Clark. I'm the Director of the Division of Licensing Services. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Let's go around the table, start with the board members and do a roll call. And Albany?
Hi, Duncan McKenzie. Dan Hartnett.
Hey. And in New York City?
Sandra Erickson.
Dale Burnett.
Jeremy Schildkraut.
All right, so we have a small group this morning. Unfortunately, we do not have a quorum. Do we have any Department of State staff members in the city?
No.
Okay. Okay, so Albany, let's go around and introduce the staff. Mark, we'll start with you.
Mark Mastrobuto, Educational Standards.
Jody DeLallo, Processing.
Yes,
Nancy
we do
Harrigan,
that.
Education and Exams.
Donna Zoller, Exam Unit.
Sharon Charlotte, Board Coordinator.
Mary Jo Moore, Supervisor of Licensing Services.
Amy Fenton,
So although we do have a small crowd,
wanna introduce
I know
yourself, yeah.
that our subcommittees have been busy since our last board meeting. So first up, Ernita Gant. Ernita, are you in the city?
Yes,
There
I
you
am
are.
here.
Okay.
Good morning.
Hi. Would you like to update the board, please, with our enforcement activities since the last board meeting?
Okay, well, the Department of State and the Division of Human Rights has partnered to enforce the New York State Fair Housing laws. The Division of Human Rights will take the lead. DHR's trained professionals will determine if discrimination in housing occurs upon an individual. Information on what constitutes discriminatory practices in the sale or rental of real estate can be found in the Division of Human Rights Fair Housing Guide and through approved fair housing courses required by the Department of State. Under the new regulation, by the Department of State, discrimination is unlawful. A finding of this discrimination by any agency constitutes untrustworthiness. The Department of State can impose sanctions in addition to any penalties imposed by any other agency. The Division of Human Rights will refer any finding of discrimination against a real estate licensee to the Department of State. The Department of State has received one referral from the Division of Human Rights under this new partnership. The case is currently pending and under investigation. The Department of State will share information on the New York State's fair housing laws at the upcoming New York State Association of Realtors Conference. I report.
Thank you, Ernita. Board members, does anybody have any questions for Ernita?
No.
No. Okay. Thank you, Ernita.
Okay.
Trends Committee, Duncan McKenzie.
We really haven't had much activity since our last meeting, but I would like to thank the department for all the hard work that resulted in the regulations that have been on the second floor for a while moving forward. So I think that's a great action that's finally gotten forward. It went through the Trends Committee, and we appreciate the support. I think it's a very positive thing for the industry.
Absolutely. Thank you, Duncan. Now I know, David, there has been some back and forth. I believe that you had some conversations with Anthony Gatto from NYSAR about the agency disclosure statement, and you've done some research on that issue. Would you like to update the board, please?
You're talking about whether or not it could be translated into other languages?
Correct.
Right. So we looked into the issue and considering the recent governor's executive order with respect to openness and working with members of the public who may not be fluent in English, we reevaluated our original interpretation of 443, and we think that we may be able to come up with a policy wherein the department would provide official translations of the 443 statements with a sort of instruction sheet or guidance document to assist brokers in how they should be dealing with members of the public who may need to have the document translated. What we're proposing, or what we're currently considering, and we haven't finalized this yet, but would be to have the document's translated into, there's a language access policy plan that identifies certain languages which documents should be translated into. So we would translate the agency disclosure into those languages, have sort of a cover page instructional sheet, and then basically advise the brokers that they would be giving both the English version as well as the translation to the client, who will then sign both documents so that they'll understand really the relationship and what the purpose and intent of the document is. So we think we'll satisfy the intent of what 443 says, move forward towards what the governor's executive order says, and also trying to protect the public by ensuring they understand the documents that they're signing. So we're currently reviewing that, and we hope that this might be something we would be able to do.
Thank you, David. Does anybody have any questions for David?
Yeah, are there a number of how many languages are you talking about translating this into?
So I believe the Department of State's current language access plan has identified 9 languages. It's in part based, I believe, on like the most commonly spoken languages according to some sort of census, or the last census. The current language access plan is actually filed with DHR, and it's on their website, but I believe the exact number is 9. Could be mistaken.
Thank you.
All right, so we should have an update for the board, definitely by the next meeting. If we reach a decision before then, we'll contact the board members and advise both NYSAR and REBNY so they can advise their members as well. And the translated agency disclosure statements for the executive order, those translations would be done by us and made available to you for your members. Okay, Education Subcommittee, Mark Mastrobuono.
Right, the Education Subcommittee has looked at the continuing education subject of diversity. In the past, we've always denied courses submitted under diversity because we've always felt that they were more marketing and salesmanship, which are not allowed by regulation. However, working with the subcommittee, we've determined that there are learning objectives and areas of subject matter that can be related to the core principles and practices of real estate. So moving forward, as we get course submissions with the subject of diversity, we'll be looking at them carefully and of course approving the time allotted to subjects that we find related to principles and practices. So, we will certainly look at any submissions from any schools, organizations, associations for diversity. And with the advent of fair housing, we found that some of these subjects now apply a bit more to the principles. So using that as a tool as well, we'll look at these carefully and try to approve any diversity courses that we do feel fit into the principles and practices of real estate. So we thank everyone in the subcommittee for taking a look at that information and everyone who participated. And we look forward to receiving course submissions so that we can sort of make a template of acceptable subject matter moving forward.
Thank you, Mark. Does anyone have any questions? No. Also on the topic of education, I believe, David, a bill's been passed that makes changes to the continuing education requirements pertaining to the law of agency.
Yes. So very recently, the governor signed a bill which really requires, within the first cycle term, for salespeople to have at least 1 hour of agency training. Or actually, I'm sorry, I believe in the first cycle term it's 2, and then thereafter it's 1. And so, which actually is related in part, or is a nice segue into something that Duncan had mentioned earlier regarding our moving forward with the regulations. We recently got approval to publish in the Register notice of proposed for several outstanding regulations just so that the board is aware of them, we're talking about 175.1, which is relating to escrow deposits and how much time they can be held before being deposited. 175.7, which concerns consent of the parties. 176.3, which concerns a licensed safety course and a reduction in hours to the property insurance course. 177.3, which allows training modules to be less than, instead of 3 hours, 1 hour, and so that will allow the brokers and the licensees to take the now mandatory 1 hour agency course. So they sort of go well with each other. An amendment to 177.7, which allows or changes the computation from 60 minutes to 50 minutes. And then a change to 175.25, which now requires in the advertisements of business cards that the specific license type be listed, as just sort of a clarification of the recent advertising rules, or the advertising rules that were amended a couple of years back. So those regulations were submitted for publication as notice proposed. They'll actually appear in the state register next week on 9/28, and hopefully after the comment period, I did the math yesterday. I think that if, depending on the type of comments, the earliest we'd probably be able to go for an adoption having them effective is end of January, which will be sort of right around the time when the agency or the agents have to now take the mandatory agency class, or the agency law class, in order to renew.
David, so the proposal is going to be published next week on the 28th.
Yes.
When does the 45-day public comment period end? Do you have your math in front of you?
I don't have that in front of me. Sorry.
Okay. So what we'll need to do, we'll need to take a look at the end of the public comment period and probably schedule our next board meeting or shortly after that, because this is a regulation that the board is going to have to vote to adopt and to consider any public comments that we received. So what we'll do in advance of the next board meeting, we'll send you all a copy of the proposed rule so you can familiarize yourself with it. And then at the end of the public comment period, we'll provide you with information on the comments that we received. Does anyone have any questions for David? Thank you, Dave.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so our first action item, unfortunately, we can't move on today because we do not have a quorum. That's the approval of the meeting minutes. So we'll save that for our next board meeting. We'll have to vote and approve the minutes from 2 meetings. And the pending regulations, which I believe David already addressed. Dave, did you have anything else on that topic?
Nope. The other regulations that we're working on internally was if there was some discussion about whether or not both the selling and the broker or the listing can get the 250 points. We've clarified that issue in terms of policy, but at the request of the board from an earlier meeting, we're still working on drafting those regs. We haven't moved forward with them yet, but that is something that we're still working on. Other than that, the regulations I just mentioned, we're moving forward. Other than that, I think we're pretty good on addressing regulation issues on behalf of the board.
Thank you, David. Okay, the next agenda item is a public comment period. Do we have anyone in Albany who would like to make a public comment? No. New York City?
Hi, yes, this is Neil Garfinkel, counsel to the Real Estate Board in New York. I also want to thank the Department of State for allowing us to participate and inviting our comments on the pending regulations. We also look forward to their final adoption. So thank you for allowing us to comment on that.
Thank you, Neil. Anybody else in New York? No. Okay, so next meeting date, Sharon hasn't included a calendar in everybody's meeting folder. Sharon, how many times have we met this year? So is that our requirement for this board?
Yes.
Okay, so we've met our annual meeting requirement. So it looks like we're looking for January. Sharon, do you have any proposed dates?
No, it's kind of hard. We have to schedule both rooms in New York, well, 3 rooms.
Okay.
And or Rochester. Next time it'll be Rochester that we'll meet in instead of Buffalo.
Okay. So we're looking at the month of January. I know it's a ways off, but is anybody aware of any major scheduling conflicts where you're going to be unavailable that month?
Probably just the
No.
first week in January, no, but after that should be fine.
Okay. All right, so we'll take a look at the room availability, and we'll circulate a proposed meeting date, so we can get this scheduled. And if you could, I'd ask the board members, just please, if you just get back to sharing one way or the other, if you have a conflict, if you're going to appear, it'll make us handling the logistics much easier. Okay, adjournment, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Do you have any comments?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
Second, in favor?
Aye.
All
Aye.
right, the meeting's adjourned, but don't go anywhere. This is, our statute requires us to also have public hearings several times a year, so this is one of the meetings where we are scheduled to have a public hearing. David, would you like to call the public hearing to order?
Sure. So as Director Clark just mentioned, the Department of State is required to hold at least one public hearing each year in New York City, one public hearing in Buffalo, one public hearing in Albany. The purpose of the hearing is to solicit from the members of the public suggestions, comments, and observations about the real estate practice in New York. That's required by RPL Section 442I6. So at this time, we're going to open up this meeting to see if there are any public comments. So I guess we'll start in New York. Does anybody in New York want to offer a public comment, suggestion, or observation about real estate practice? Okay, Albany?
No?
Buffalo?
No Buffalo.
Okay, so with that, I guess the public hearing to solicit from the members of the public suggestions, comments, and observations about real estate practice in New York can be closed.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.